Coming up on The World Today. More countries around the world confirm cases of Omicron variant, increase anti-coronavirus measures. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa on a visit to Nigeria says travel restrictions over Omicron variant discriminatory. Plus, World Health Organization agrees to launch talks on pact to tackle future pandemics. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Tenyola Shoboale. Countries around the world continue to increase anti-coronavirus measures as they try to assess the new threat of the Omicron strain. In Nigeria, the Nigeria Centers for Disease Control has confirmed the country's first 3 cases of the new variant. A statement from the NCDC says 3 passengers who arrived in the country from South Africa last week tested positive to the new variant after a genomic sequencing of positive cases from the routine tests for all inbound travelers were carried out on the passengers. Several other countries around the world have also confirmed cases of the new strain. Here's a roundup on our global update.
Apart from Nigeria, a number of countries around the world have also reported their first cases of Omicron today. It includes Ghana, the Republic of Ireland, and Brazil. Saudi Arabia has also reported a case. It's the first Omicron variant case reported in the Gulf region. Canada, seeking to halt the spread of the Omicron coronavirus variant, will now require people arriving by air from all nations except the United States to take a COVID-19 test. Canada has identified 7 people with the new variant, at least 4 of them whom they say were recently in Nigeria.
The rules around those that are not vaccinated are not changing today. No, it's the same rules apply. When someone comes into Canada with a right of entry, that person needs to be tested at the land or at the airport, and that person needs to quarantine for 14 days and need to be tested once more on day 8. What changes today is the rule for those that are vaccinated coming into an airport in Canada. Those people will need to be tested on arrival at the airport and isolate and wait until their test result is known before exiting their isolation period.
Meanwhile, Europe continues to battle rising COVID cases as travel bans and new measures take effect to slow the spread of Omicron. In Portugal, proof of a negative COVID test is now required for anyone over the age of 12 arriving at the country's airport, whether or not they have been vaccinated. Portugal has already reported more than a dozen cases of the new Omicron variant. In France, travellers from outside the European Union will be subject to the obligation of a negative COVID-19 test, regardless of their vaccination status. Away from Europe, in India, officials have made on-arrival COVID-19 testing mandatory for flyers from more than a dozen countries, including South Africa and Britain. The decision comes after a man who recently returned from South Africa tested positive for COVID-19, though it is not yet clear which strain of the coronavirus he contracted.
Meanwhile, speaking while on a visit to Nigeria, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has once again criticized travel bans imposed on southern African countries over the Omicron variant. The president calls the restrictions discriminatory as they are not only unscientific but counterproductive in the long run.
Indeed, the leaders of Côte d'Ivoire, where we are traveling to later today, as well as the leaders of Ghana and Senegal, have also expressed their dissatisfaction with the travel ban against South Africa and our sister countries in Southern Africa. This is a global pandemic, and overcoming it requires that we collaborate and work together as a collective. The resulting damage to this travel ban to the economies of the countries affected will be considerable and long-lasting.
Well, despite the warnings against imposing travel bans, a number of countries continue to restrict travel from southern Africa. Today, Malaysia has announced a restriction of entry of travelers from countries that have reported the Omicron coronavirus variant or are considered high risk. The Southeast Asian nation joins countries around the world that have limited travel from southern Africa, where the variant, believed to be the most contagious yet, was first detected. The Health Ministry says the travel ban applies to 8 African countries, including South Africa, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Malawi, but could be extended to other nations where the variant has been detected, such as Britain and the Netherlands.
Even though we have put a travel restriction on people coming in from South Africa, this is a temporary measure. And the moment that we feel that it is safe, we will lift these measures. And this is by no means a measure that we have taken to punish these countries. Rather, it is more precautionary as far as Malaysia is concerned.
Well, at a time when the world is gearing up to battle the new variant of COVID-19, the World Health Organization has agreed to launch negotiations on an international pact to prevent and control future pandemics. Such an agreement to beef up measures against pandemics is expected to be ready in May 2024, covering issues from data sharing and genome sequencing of emerging viruses to equitable distribution of vaccines and drugs derived from research.
The adoption of this decision is cause for celebration and cause for hope that we all need. Of course, there is still a long road ahead. There are still differences of opinion about what a new accord could or should contain. But you have proven to each other and the world that differences can be overcome and common ground can be found. I thank you, our member states. After all, this is your WHO. I thank you for the overwhelming support expressed by member states for the need for a new accord on pandemic preparedness and response.
The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said she thinks it's time for member states to consider compulsory vaccinations. She says such measures are required due to the emergence of the Omicron variant.
At this point, we do not know all about this variant, but we know enough to be concerned. You have read about the multiple mutations and what that might be. And we know from our experience with the Delta variant that it is a race against time. Therefore, till we know what's going on, and this will take 2 to 3 weeks, that scientists tell us, we have to do everything possible to make the best out of the time we have till we have certainty about the characteristics of transmissibility and severity of Omicron. It is good that they take their 2 to 3 weeks. This is, in normal times, a short period. In pandemic times, it's an eternity. Therefore, I repeat, vaccinate, boost, and distant trace as much as possible during that time. This is of utmost importance. In the very end, we will then know what to do, and therefore my line at the very end is hope for the best, prepare for the worst. What science tells us already is that full vaccination and boosters provide the strongest protection against COVID that is available now. So we are in kind of a tug of war. On the one hand, you have the virus and the variants, and on the other hand, we have vaccination and boosters, and I want the second part to win.
Over in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has not denied that parties were held in Downing Street last winter, despite the lockdown at the time, saying only that no COVID rules were broken. The Prime Minister was challenged during questions about the allegations first reported by the Mirror newspaper. Opposition leader Keir Starmer in Parliament accused Mr Johnson of taking the British public for fools.
He's not denied it. Mr. Speaker, what I can tell the right honourable gentleman is that all guidance was followed completely during Number 10. And can I recommend to the right honourable gentleman that he does the same with his own Christmas party, which he's advertised for December the 15th, to which unaccountably he's failed to invite the deputy leader, Mr. Speaker.
Does the Prime Minister really expect the country to believe that while people were banned from seeing their loved ones at Christmas last year, it was fine for him and his friends to throw a boozy party in Downing Street?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've said what I've said about Number 10 and the events of 12 months ago, but he since asked about what we're asking the country to do this year, Mr. Speaker, which I think is, frankly, a more relevant consideration. The important thing to do, Mr. Speaker, is not only to follow the guidance which we have set out, but also when it comes to dealing with the Omicron variant, to make sure that, as we've said, that you wear a mask on public transport and in shops, Mr. Speaker, and that you self-isolate if you come into contact with somebody who has Omicron, Mr. Speaker. And above all, what we're doing is strengthening our measures at the borders, but particularly, and I think this will be very valuable for everybody to hear,
To other health matters, new infections and deaths from HIV/AIDS may increase as the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted prevention measures. That's according to UN AIDS Executive Director Winnie Byanyima. Byanyima, who is also United Nations Under-Secretary General, says that during the first pandemic phase in particular, fewer people opted to be tested and some dropped out of treatment because of long lines at clinics or other public safety measures that impeded access to prevention measures.
Now, COVID has hit us and is pushing us further off track. We saw, especially in the first phase of the pandemic, 2020, we saw disruptions in prevention services. We saw fewer people coming to get the prevention tools, fewer people coming for testing, people dropping out of treatment because they were afraid of going to clinics and lining up for a long time, or they were restricted by the public safety measures. So we saw disruptions, but communities, which are the center of fighting HIV, are resilient, are innovative. We saw them fighting back and restoring some of these services. But we do expect that in the coming years, we might see more deaths, we might see more new infections as a result of these disruptions.
Meanwhile, Pope Francis has called for a renewed solidarity with victims of the HIV virus to guarantee care for those in the world's poorest places. Speaking at his general audience, Pope Francis said, World AIDS Day is an important occasion to remember the many people affected by this virus, for whom many in some areas of the world there is no access to essential care. There's still to come on the program. I'll be telling you the city named as the world's most expensive. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. In the United States, a 15-year-old has killed 3 fellow students and injured 8 others, including a teacher, in a high school shooting in the state of Michigan. The victims have been named as 16-year-old Tate Meyer, Madison Baldwin, 17, and Hannah Juliana, 14. Officials say they do not know whether they were targeted. Police allege the suspect, a student at the school, used a handgun that his father had bought last Friday.
All the things that led up to it and making sure that this investigation is full and complete before it's turned over to hold this individual accountable. This kind of thing can happen anywhere, and sadly, it happened even in a sweet, quiet community like Oxford. It can visit itself anywhere in America. No one is immune. When they took it from him, he had a loaded firearm and he was coming down the hall. That, again, I believe, interrupted what potentially could have been 7 more victims.
Our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird, joins us now for more. Maria, what more can you tell us about this shooting and investigations at this stage?
Well, we know that, as we heard earlier just a few moments ago, that it is an open investigation. They're going to have to check every bit of that school building. We know that schools are closed today in that community and for the rest of the week, just to ensure no further occurrences of this happen, and that this is not something that was a group of individuals, and it was just the one young man, 15 years old, that actually conducted the violence. And so that open investigation will probably be going on throughout the week before they will bring further charges against the 15-year-old. He is in a juvenile detention facility at this time and under a watch of the guards every 15 minutes to ensure he does not commit suicide. I think he's under a suicide watch currently at this time to ensure that he is able to obviously go through with this process, because he's obviously going to be key and critical to further information and investigation and to coming up with what was the root cause and actually what happened during this horrific event on yesterday.
Yeah, a really tragic event. I mean, U.S. shootings on school grounds have been ticking steadily upwards in recent years. 138 incidents of gunfire on school grounds have been reported so far in 2021. What is the Biden administration doing to tackle this?
Well, we know that there was a heavy push for this during the Obama administration, so it's probably very likely that we will see in the coming weeks, and we will definitely probably see sometime today President Biden coming out and speaking further about this. And so gun laws and policies as it relates to guns within our schools are going to definitely become a major concern, especially now that the Build Back Better plan has moved itself forward and those bills are moving forward. So I think that you're going to probably be hearing that in the coming weeks from the administration. This is the largest massacre at a high school that has occurred at a school in general in the U.S. since 2018. And so, as we know, there have been many school shootings, but to this magnitude, it was back during the Obama administration. And so we know that we will probably have a heightened alert for this, and obviously there will be additional parameters put in place, and federal policies will definitely be probably brought toward the House and obviously the White House to be able to see how we can ensure the safety and protection of young people in schools.
All right, then, Maria, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has repeated his warning that any future Russian aggression against Ukraine would come at a high price and have serious political and economic consequences for Russia. Speaking after a NATO foreign ministers meeting in Riga, he said NATO had many ways of deterring Russia, also citing more economic and financial sanctions. He also said NATO's support for Ukraine's territorial integrity remains unwavering.
We need to remain vigilant and avoid escalation. Ministers made clear any future Russian aggression would come at a high price and have serious political and economic consequences for Russia. The lessons learned from NATO's engagement there over almost 2 decades. Ministers made clear that we stand by our decisions. Our support for their sovereignty and territorial integrity remains unwavering.
The International Organization for Migration says migration between richer countries has risen, while conflict and climate change have increased internal displacement in fragile states that many people cannot leave. IOM Director General Antonio Vitorino, who presented the report in front of the agency's council, says 18 of the top 20 countries of origin for migrants in 2020 were highly developed, up from 7 in 1995. At the same time, the number of people internally displaced grew in 2020 to 55 million globally, up from 51 million in 2019, a vulnerability worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has grounded many would-be migrants.
But these long-term trends on who migrates globally show that we are today at risk of an international, what I would call, mobility divide, with potential consequences for global inequality. The new report also highlights that some regional labor migration corridors are heavily gendered toward male migration, connected to several factors, such as the sector and occupation gaps in destination countries. We also found in this report that migration is increasingly happening between highly developed countries, rather than from least or low development countries to high development countries. Of the top 20 countries of origin in 2020, and here we exclude refugee populations.
And now 4 people have been injured, one seriously, after a World War II bomb blew up on a railway construction site in the German city of Munich. The fire brigade says it happened during drilling work near Donzberger Bridge, close to the main station. As a result, rail traffic in much of Munich was brought to a standstill. Unexploded wartime bombs are frequently found in Germany and prompt big evacuations, but most are defused by experts without exploding. Police say the bomb went off during tunnel work near the bridge. Local reports described a loud bang followed by a column of smoke. And now Tel Aviv has been named as the most expensive city in the world to live in, as soaring inflation and supply chain problems push up prices globally. The Israeli city came top for the first time in a survey by the Economist Intelligence Unit, climbing from 5th place last year and pushing Paris down to join second with Singapore. Damascus in war-torn Syria retained its place as the cheapest in the world. The survey compares costs in US dollars for goods and services in 173 cities. And finally, the world's fastest Rubik's Cube solvers will go head-to-head on Saturday as the Cubic World Cup reaches its final. The 2 finalists can compete in 4 categories: mixed speed cubbing, fastest one-handed solve female, and the re-scramble event, where competitors are given a solved cube and need to match the pattern on a randomly scrambled one. Over 4,200 entrants from more than 50 countries competed in the first round of the knockout competition. The final 32 will be voted down on Friday, and the ultimate champions in each event will be crowned on Saturday. That's definitely something to look forward to. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.